That takes you to item 7.4, which is a report by the Chief Executive on petition for consideration Edinburgh Council commitment to 100% plant-based food for internal catering of meetings and events. An administration amendment, a Liberal Democrat group amendment, Conservative group amendment and Green group amendment have been circulated, and we have Jelly Severin and Anne-Marie Hughes to speak to the report.
You're very welcome. Do you want to introduce the report?
Thank you, Convener. We're really, pardon me, only here to answer technical questions in relation to catering. Thank you.
Sorry, I'll catch up in a minute.
Just to be clear, Convener, Jamie will correct me if I'm wrong, this is obviously a petition report. Members have simply got to decide of the three options set out at 3.2, which do you wish to go for, and if there's any matters of clarification, then officers can help on that.
Thank you for that clarification. Question, Councillor Booth.
Thanks very much indeed, Convener, and thanks for coming along today. So, in my view, we should ask officers for a response to the issues that are raised in the petition, and I've got a question. I think probably the first part of my question is to Gilly, and possibly the second part to our colleagues from Catering. So my understanding is that the update report on the plant-based treaty has now been delayed from December until March. Is that correct, is the first part of my question?
That is correct.
Thank you. And would it be feasible to respond to the majority of issues that are raised in this petition as part of that March update report?
Yes, that's fine.
With your permission, Convener, if I could ask our colleagues from Catering. So part of our amendment is seeking to try and introduce a sort of finance mechanism. It's not a finance mechanism. It's a reflection of the costs that people pay for catering to reflect the external costs, the environmental costs of meat and dairy in particular. We are envisaging that that would probably mean that meat and dairy would be more expensive when compared to plant-based alternatives. I suppose my question for you is, if we asked you to come forward with proposals for how you could do that as part of the current budget setting process, is that too tight a timetable, or do you think that that might be possible with...
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, and it's possible within the timescale. We would take advice and we would support other parts of the Council's catering function within the City of Edinburgh Council, because it is quite complex in itself. Thank you.
I think, Convener, David will correct me if I'm wrong, obviously officers led by Debs and Richard are liaising with groups all the time on matters relating to budget setting. We'll ask finance colleagues to work with David and colleagues on kind of trying to get some briefing and keep it in line, and we can use the budget strategy working group, Debs, if need be, just to clarify anything on that. I can't say exactly when that'll be ready, but we'll certainly try and do that within the budget process.
Thank you. Do I have any further questions? Councillor Day.
Thank you, Convener. I wonder, are you hearing at your different outlets across the catering estate a demand for a change in this from your customers?
Thank you, Councillor Day. The answer to that would be we've not seen any particular appetite is a good word, isn't it? Appetite for significant change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry. Sorry.
Apologies. Please do.
A bit of, can you hear me? Perhaps maybe some internal appetite, I would say, that we've made a lot of good progress in terms of our processes and our practices already to date in terms of the impact of climate change and sustainability. So we work very closely with our key partners as well in terms of supply chain. So we have made significant change internally already. So there's a lot of good work going on in the background to support that, but not necessarily customer request.
Thank you. Any further questions. Could I ask a quick question? How easy it would be to assess? So just for example, I did have a plant-based lunch. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. But, and there's a big but here, part of it was avocado, which I know has a significant climate impact, shall we say. So how easy is it to ascertain all of that, if you see what I mean? So if we move towards a plant-based offering, to what extent would that contribute to a reduction of emissions when we take into account the climate costs, if you like, of importing and water and all of that sort of stuff? That's the technical term, stuff. But I hope you understand my question.
I think it depends. I suppose looking at part of our catering service, we've got very different service streams. We've got the school meal service, which is completely different to, I assume, what we're talking about in terms of internal catering. City chambers, for example, we're very much governed by our clients' needs and requirements. You know, we get a lot of ad hoc weddings, hospitality and events. Sometimes it's about cultural beliefs. You know, we have a lot of kind of sort of high-profile events where they might have an Indian theme or a Chinese theme. So again, I think it really just depends on what our customers want. And I suppose if we were limiting that choice or that option, we can source things that are a bit more sustainable. But actually, you know, maybe it's about what revenue, what actual income would we then generate from people that might potentially go elsewhere if we weren't able to provide the service that they were looking for.
Thank you. Councillor Cuthbert.
Yeah, thank you, Convener. I've got a broad-based question. I think it probably touches on a few of the amendments and also the evidence that we heard this morning. But it's just to say that there is a sort of assumption, I think, lying behind this, that the meat that we're talking about is farmed, but there is quite a lot of meat available in Scotland that's not farmed, and that's wild venison. Now, most of that is taken because deer populations are very, very high. You know, they eat crops, and particularly, you know, they damage young trees, etc. So, if we did go down the route of saying, you know, we're not going to have farmed meat, then would we still be able to offer, you know, wild venison?
Sorry, Councillor, is that a question? Okay, so I suppose to answer that question, the challenge we've got is we are bound by our own procurement requirements. There is elements of how we have Scottish nutritional guidelines that we meet in terms of farm assured and red tractor meats and so forth. In terms of answering that, it's difficult to quantify exactly how we would be able to calculate whether the benefit is there. Obviously, it would be how we would then bring that to the plate from said wild position. It's very difficult to be able to quantify that. Thank you.
Just to add, just to remind members, your decision today is whether you want a report or not. We obviously await your decision on that. If there's a report, and Gilly's talked about something on plant-based treaty coming in March, then the issues around it will be in the report, and that'll give us the time to dig into exactly those kind of questions. Councillor Booth's also asked for this information in relation to budget, and we'll try and do that specifically on the financial issues. But on the kind of what kind of products could we have, their carbon impacts, etc. Just give us a bit of time to do that in the main report, if that's okay.
Thank you. I suppose that's why I was asking how possible it would be to tease out the kind of information that I think would be useful to elected members. So where does that take us procedurally, Jamie? Do we still take the... But yeah, that's fine. Just checking. Thank you. So if there are no further questions to officers, and many thanks for coming along, and thanks to the Chief Executive for reminding us not to burden you with things prematurely, shall we say. Thank you. Okay, so moving on, I will therefore move the amendment, if that's what it is, in the administration's name, because I think it's very important to make sure that there are no unintended consequences of moving towards or including a plant-based diet for internal catering for meetings and events. And I've illustrated that with my own recent lunch experience that illustrates, doesn't it, the fact that sometimes what's plant-based can be particularly damaging to the environment. So we need to take all of that into account, as we do, of course, of issues such as potential waste as a consequence of offering food that people don't want. So I think there are many complex issues, and therefore our amendment seeks to understand that together with the financial impacts of adopting 100% plant-based for internal catering, because of course we need to know that we, if we're going to budget for it, we need to know what the financial implications are. So I think that's pretty straightforward, or I hope it is. Do I have a seconder?
Thank you, Convener. I'm happy to second. I think it's important to reflect that, of course, we need to take these measures to impact on climate. We signed up to the treaty back last year or so to lobby national governments to come together to act on a number of these. Yet our own government in Scotland didn't sign up to that. I think it's important to acknowledge the comments from some of our lead officers today that there's no demand from the customers for this to change. And I totally get that the council and the city needs to change to respond to climate. But we need to take on board that if there's no demand for that, what does that mean to the catering service if people are not going to go along and eat their avocados on toast in the morning that are shipped across from Peru and Colombia, and instead we'll have some Brussels sprouts and cabbage made in Scotland. So I think it's right to get the report back that reflects all these issues and says how we will manage that and potential impacts on the customer and also the budgets that the council have to second.
Thank you. Moving on then to the Liberal Democrat amendment.
Thanks, Convener. So this is a petition for consideration, and as the Chief Executive Officer did point out, we have a choice to learn more or not to learn more. But before I go into my moving this, can I just make a slight verbal change? Paragraph 1 of our amendment says, contain limited meat and dairy products. Can I remove the limited and just say contained meat and dairy products? So basically what we're saying is we don't know what we don't know, and we would like to have a report on the issues raised in the petition and request that this report includes options to reduce the meat and fish and dairy products, but also on any details of unintended consequences moving towards a plant-based menu. And that could include climate change impacts, because today we've heard a lot of mention about climate change impact on plant-based foods, but we don't seem to have that information to actually back that up. But anyway, that's I would like to move that, please.
It's me, Convener, seconding this.
Councillor Dykstra-Downey, apologies. There you are.
Sorry. Thank you, and I will do so formally. Thank you.
Thank you. And that takes me to the Conservative Group amendment.
Convener, we've decided that we don't believe we should take this matter any further. We've had a lot of discussions in the council over the last sort of year and a half, 2 years, about how much we are burdening officers with work to produce reports, to tell us things that we may or may not already know, and with little or no benefit to the wider public. Councillor Day quite rightly asked whether there was demand for this out there, and the answer was, we've not particularly seen it. There might be some that will naturally flow through in itself. It'll flow through in menus, it'll flow through in what people choose. So there's no need to do this. People will make their own decisions. And as a free market Conservative, I fully support people making their own decisions.
The irony isn't lost on me that we're having this debate about banning meat in catering and council products, and we're about to have a debate about providing somewhere for people to use Class A drugs which are illegal. We're juxtaposing those together, convener. It's a very odd position to be in, that we're in this place. So, where do we go from there? Well, let's see what Quality Meat Scotland have told us. They've told us about the nutritional benefits of meat as part of a balanced diet. They've told us about the health benefits, the environmental benefits of Scottish meat, and 90% of Scottish meat is assured by them. And I'm sure that everything our catering suppliers send us, because we have strong standards on this, will have that Scotch meat mark, and so will meet those requirements, and is actually reducing emissions. And it produces far fewer emissions than some of the issues with imported meat in this country. And of course, it adds 2.8 billion to the Scottish economy, supports around 50,000 jobs, and the vast majority of Scotland's land can't be used for other things, certainly can't be used for cereal, fruit or vegetable production. So what are we saying to our colleagues in rural areas if we stop buying Scotch meat? We should say no to this because it's unnecessary, because people make their own choices, and we should particularly say no to Councillor Booth's proposal to charge differential amounts over and above what the market determines on different foods, because I think that would be the death knell for council catering outside. It would cause us real problems with an already precarious market of marketing, wedding venues and so on. We shouldn't be going there. That could lose jobs if you're also concerned about council jobs. Just stop doing this. Stop the flag waving for unnecessary things. Let people make their own choices and stop burdening officers with all this additional work. Thanks, convener.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Formally, convener.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Booth to move the Green amendment.
Thanks very much indeed, convener. I note Councillor Aston was very keen to make a contribution to the debate. I look forward with interest to hearing what he has to say. I think there seem to be 4 parties that agree that we do need to get a report looking at the issues raised by the petition. I would just add, although the petitioners aren't in the public gallery, they may well be watching on the webcast. My personal view is that we should simply make a decision today, but unfortunately that would fall foul of our clerks and Mr. King in particular, and the Wednesbury principle, which is that we can't as councillors make a decision without a report in front of us. So my personal view is we should simply make a decision on this and crack on, but unfortunately we would fall foul. So we are asking for a report. Now, it may well be that when the report comes back, there is more division about what we do with it. I think our position is absolutely clear. There's no doubt that the petitioners are right, that a reduction in meat and dairy in the food that the council provides would show leadership in the climate sphere, and would, because we know for a fact that a plant-based diet is much lower in terms of its carbon emissions, even taking into account avocados, convener. So I hope there is consensus. I note the response from officers earlier in terms of the timing for the update report on the plant-based treaty. My preference, if it's okay with other colleagues, is that we get the response to this petition as part of that report, which will be coming back in March, rather than, I think some other colleagues have suggested, sort of within 3 cycles. 3 cycles would push us quite a long way down next year, and I would prefer March if that meets agreement with 4 out of the 5 parties around the table. I was also going to add a verbal adjustment, but actually bearing in mind the response we've heard from officers, and in particular Chief Exec, that the officers are confident that they could provide some sort of indication at least about the financial implications of acknowledging the asks in the petition as part of the budget setting process this year, I think that would be incredibly helpful. I think we've heard some alarmism from the Conservatives. We've heard about actually we could reduce our emissions by eating deer. I mean, I'll use another animal. I would say that that's perhaps a bit of a red herring. We've heard alarmism from the Conservatives that somehow introducing some sort of a price reflection of the CO2 emissions of food would be the death knell of council catering. I mean, this is just, we're asking for a report. You know, this is not the death knell of council catering, and I think we've heard some alarmism from the Conservatives. I think we need to take that with, to use another food analogy, a pinch of salt. So with that, convener, I move the Green Amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Booth. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, just very quickly, convener, I'm really happy to second this, and I'm grateful to the officers for clearing up the debate about whether we're having a report or whether we're making huge decisions about whether we eat our greens or not. I think it is important to eat our greens, and some of the mutterings that I've been hearing around the table about vegetables not being tasty seem to me to be a bit childish. So I'm looking forward to hearing a report and being able to take a decision in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Councillor Aston, I was about to say any contributions, but I know there will be one from you.
Thanks, convener. Yeah, I suppose I wanted to start off possibly not in the way you would have expected, but by saying that I disagree with Councillor Booth, and I think it's right that we're not making the decision today, Wednesbury principles notwithstanding. I think it's important we get a report. I think it's important that all the facts are on the table. I appreciate that the Green Group will probably want to bring forward budget proposals in relation to it, and that's fair enough. That's for them. But the main reason I put my hand up, and I put my hand up before Councillor Booth spoke, was of course in response to what Councillor White was saying, and his. I think it would be giving him too much credit to call it sleight of hand in framing this as a debate on whether or not the council serves us up meat and fish in its catering. This is not what this is about. We are just asking, or we are just being asked whether or not we proceed with a report here, and we're being asked that actually by members of the public, people who live in Edinburgh. I've lost count of the number of evening news articles by Councillor White titled things like "The People Speak and the Council Doesn't Listen," "The Council That Doesn't Listen," and so on and so forth. I live with a vegetarian. Most of my meals at home are veggie, but I continue to eat meat because I enjoy it, and I recognise that many parts of Scotland are reliant on beef and lamb farming for jobs and their local economy. So I do think it's important that we get a report on this, and I would just emphasise again, we're just getting a report. We're not making any further decision today.
Thank you, convener. Councillor Aston has said pretty much everything I was going to say, so I will keep it short and say that I too live with a vegetarian, and I'm not a vegetarian, and you know what? Maybe I should be.
Controversial. Councillor Watt.
See, now I have to contribute because I am a vegetarian and I have been for the best part of 50 years. I think I'm doing enough. I'd quite like to just have some milk in my coffee, proper milk in my coffee. If I have to pay a surcharge for that, well, that's fair enough, if that offsets the carbon emissions. But honestly, you know, I think that if people are doing their best to cut down, that's fair, but forcing them into a position where they're not going to cut down, they're just going to bring in something of their own or go out to eat, not eat here, it's not going to help. So, you know, let people do, you know, as Councillor Thornley said, oh, you know, I'm thinking it, you know, thinking they might move to being a vegetarian. So let people think about it and make their choices, because what they're going to choose to do, if you force plant-based in the council, they're just going to go out.
I'm just reminding ourselves that all we're asking for is a report. So just a reminder. Councillor
Convener, I'd like to commend the petitioners because they have created this conversation, and these conversations are worth having. We've been discussing our food system, and the fact is, our food system globally isn't terribly sustainable as it stands at the moment, and that's not just about the amount of meat that is in our diet either. I've heard from experts that actually rewilding a great deal of the highlands, where presumably as part of the areas Councillor White is saying cannot be used for vegetable production, but rewilding them would actually make them more productive and provide more jobs as a whole. That, you know, the enclosures and the highland clearances have led to a situation where we have developed less sustainable food structures in order to enrich a very few. And we need to move away from a world where we are using unsustainable structures in order to enrich a very few. And these kind of conversations only occur in this council if people like these petitioners bring petitions like this forward and force us to have them. It's been an interesting discussion. People have raised various points about the nuances of our diets and our food systems. I think that's a very good thing. And I think a report coming will only push that further and do more of that. So I think that's excellent. That's all.
Thank you. Bear in mind we're asking for a report. Councillor Dobbin.
Thank you. Like my friend here, I am omnivorous, and I find that I'm eating less meat and more plant-based food in my diet. And there's no question that eating vegetables is of particular importance to health and well-being. The one thing I do object to in this discussion is that we're polarising it around plant-based food and animal food. And that certainly is part of the debate in the environmental, ecological terms. But for me, what's also as important, if not more important, is healthy food versus unhealthy food. We talk about, for example, if we look at what's happening in England around the River Wye, which has basically been destroyed as a river by the runoff from mass chicken farms. Those chickens in mass marketing are very, very unhealthy. If we look at the impact of the very large industrial beef lots in the US and, for example, Brazil, they're generating something like 6 or 7 times as much methane per cow as grass-fed Scottish beef. The impact of grazing animals in Scotland is very, very good for developing and maintaining the nutrition of soil. So the debate should not just be about, I'm alarmed that Councillor White's nodding vigorously at me. This has to be a first. So the debate should not just be about whether it's plant-based or meat. It's about healthy food, which at the moment, and I'll pick up on Councillor Staniforth's point, the food system that we all suffer under is driving chronic health conditions in our civic society, and that's something that needs much more attention. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dobbin. Do I have any further contributions or confessions of diet? If not, can I move? So my understanding is, in response to the Chief Executive's point, that there are 4 groups within this committee who wish for a report to further consider the issues here. We've got some practical issues relating to Councillor Booth, the question of whether the report would come in March as part of an intended report anyway. But I think we've dealt with that, have we, to your satisfaction, looking at your amendment?
Thanks, Convener. So I think if we agree that, that the issues will be addressed as part of the update report, obviously our amendment says 9th of December 2025. I understand that's now been updated. So if we just say it as part of the update report, and I can delete the date if that would be helpful.
I think that would be very helpful. I'm looking to Jamie just so that it can be recorded correctly. So we have a position, an agreed position on the part of the 4 groups. So Jamie, can you steer us through this, please? Thank you. Jamie's just keeping us right. So I would like to confirm then that I am accepting the Liberal Democrat, the Green and the SNP amendments into... I wish that were true, that I was trying to make sure you're all paying attention. Yes, thank you very much. But you've indicated your position. Is that now sufficiently clear, Jamie? Thank you.
Thanks, Convener. So we have 2 positions. Motion moved by Councillor Marr, seconded by Councillor Day, which is the administration motion as circulated, and that accepts the Liberal Democrat group position moved by Councillor Mackay, seconded by Councillor Dykstra-Downey, which is as verbally adjusted, and also accepts the Green position moved by Councillor Booth, seconded by Councillor Miller. Against that is the Conservative amendment moved by Councillor White, seconded by Councillor Jones. Could I take the votes for the Conservative amendment, please? Thank you. And for the motion? Thank you. That's 3 for the motion, 3 for the amendment and 14 for the motion. The motion is carried.